So today I wanted to talk less about what SACRD does exactly and how it works exactly, and more about the impact that we've had on the San Antonio community and what we've done in the 6 years that we've been working on this. So I'm going to show a few things, but we have as I was working to put this together, went back to look at some of the timelines, and so I started working for Ann and I want to say it was around September of 2017, and
Mhm.
that as part of that we were talking to organizations and doing her very familiar by now community listening and community conversation work. And so we heard these stories about, we need better ways to find each other. And so we started working on, how we can do that. The first prototype of sacred.org was launched and was available to the public in a very small way in May of 2018. And then we did a bunch of work through it over the years, and we actually launched as a 501c3 in March of 2019, and we've been running ever since then. So we're in this close to 6 years, and really as sacred.org as we know it today, in our 5th year of doing this work. So we've come a long way since we started. Let's just kind of start. Let's do a level set. This is how we describe sacred.org. And I'm going to read this because there's some important words in here that I think we should all remember. Free, comprehensive online directory of all human service resources offered by congregations, nonprofit organizations, government agencies, and other compassionate groups in and around San Antonio. So let's parse that out a little bit. First thing is that it's free and anonymous. Does not cost anything to use SACRD, does not cost anything to have your information in SACRD. It is entirely free for the end user and for the organizations that are benefiting from this. It is not free to run. Let me just make sure I say that out loud. SACRD is not free to operate, but it is free to use. So it's also anonymous. This is a very important thing that we have held to very deeply and very closely. We have had lots of people come to us and say, you really need to be able to track the users, to identify who they are. And we have just always held the line on that. We think that if you have to enter your email address and tell us about your household income and all of that when you're using SACRD, that you won't. So it's got to be free. It's got to be anonymous. It has to be as easy and frictionless to use as possible. And so, and I think that our hard stance on that has paid dividends in the way that the platform has grown. It's also comprehensive and inclusive. So it's comprehensive in that it is all human services. We have 140 categories of human service that we have identified, ranging from food and shelter is always the top, transportation, healthcare needs, mental health, physical health, household goods, support groups, spiritual care. I mean, it covers the entire gamut of all human need. If a human has a need, you're going to find something for it on sacred.org. The only thing that I can think of that we don't have is affordable car repair. That's the only program that we haven't been able to find anything in and around. But everything else, there's something in SACRD. If you need it, you're going to find it in SACRD. It's also inclusive in that we include services from all organizations. This is not a nonprofit directory. This is not a faith community directory. This is not a government directory. It's all of those things. So we include services from everyone, congregations, all faith communities, nonprofit agencies, government, compassionate groups, small business when it makes sense to do so in the mental health space, medical space, and addiction recovery. Some of those services are for-profit, independent providers. And so they are providing an important service, and so they can make it into the directory. It's these things that I think all go together as a little bit of what makes SACRD work. Free, inclusive, comprehensive, everything you need, one-stop shop for all things human service. So the best way to understand it is to use it. We're not going to do that in detail today. I do want to give you just a quick, you come to sacred.org. If you're looking for something, you can just type it in. Let's type food pantry. And you can type that in. You get a list of things that match your searches. You can click on that, and you can get here's a list of all the food pantries that are close by. I always want to make sure you put in your zip code. We're searching in 78205, which is downtown. We can change the zip code to 78212, for example. And then we'll get a list of food pantries that are in that area. That's an area just north of downtown around Monte Vista section. So I'm not going to, that's as much demo as you're going to get on sacred.org today, but just know that you can use this. It's really quick, easy to use, frictionless. If you need to find a resource, you need to find somebody that's offering a resource. You need to look up an organization to find out what resources they offer. Sacred.org, SACRD.org is how you do that. So let's keep going. So who's using this, right? Who did we build this for, and who's using it? So ultimately, SACRD.org was built to help an individual seeking assistance to find a place that can provide that assistance. That is ultimately its goal. So now in practice, who's actually using it? Well, individuals use it, but more than often, it's being used by navigators of some variety. Case managers, social workers, faith community, volunteers in programs, it's typically used by someone who's using SACRD as part of their work, whether it be their day job or their volunteer vocation or something like that. Being used across all organizational types, that are listed in the directory. All those organizations are using this. Thousands and thousands of organizations are using SACRD every single week to help people. So most of the people that use it are using it on behalf of someone else. And most of the individuals that use SACRD were probably introduced to SACRD by a case manager, social worker, or a friend, or somebody that they knew who had benefited from SACRD. We guess at a lot of this because we don't track them. So, this is a lot of this information that we have is from the user groups that we do, the public outreach that we do, where we actually go into the community and talk to our users, but nothing on the site tracks anything about who you are. We do track what you do on the site, but we don't track who you are. Here's the impact. So we've had, there's about 11,000 resources in the directory today, covering about 140 categories. That's 11,000 programs. A resource is one service that's being offered by an organization that's located at a specific place. So if an organization is running a food pantry, that's one. They have a clothes closet, that's another one. They have a counseling program, that's a third one. Okay, so an organization might have 4 or 5 resources. Some of them have 1, some of them have 30. But we've got 11,000 resources. This covers almost 2,500 organizations throughout Greater San Antonio. So when I say it is comprehensive and all-inclusive, that's not hyperbole. That's comprehensive and all-inclusive. We get about 670,000 annual visits. A visit is somebody that comes to the website, uses the website to look up information. That's one visit. That happens about 13,000 times a week, 670,000 times a year. We don't count them, so this is an estimate, but we think that 300,000 people a year are benefiting from SACRD. That's just in the Greater San Antonio area. 300,000 people. That's like something like 15% of the population is getting some value out of this resource. All right, so why does it work? Well, aside from my charismatic and deeply engaging personality, it works because of these things, we think. So, this is what we call the survivor's bias. We think we know why it works, right? But we may not really know, but we think this is what makes it happen. One is it's all proximity. So all of the searches are based on proximity. We want you to be able to see things that are close to you. So you put in your zip code, you tell us what you want, and then we show you things that are close by. It's not useful if you live by Ingram Park Mall and you're looking for a food pantry and we show you one by Rolling Oaks Mall. That is not useful, right? We want to give you one that's close by, that's easy to access. So proximity is a really key ingredient of what we do. Secondly is the taxonomy. Taxonomy is just a really fancy word for categories. But we have a really well-developed taxonomy, and the taxonomy on SACRD really drives everything. It drives whether or not we include a program. It drives how we present information to the user. It drives how we grow and how we add features to the site. It is everything, and it is a well-developed, well-thought-out taxonomy that we guard very closely to make sure that we grow it in a very deliberate and informed fashion. Lastly is resource investment, or not lastly, but in the middle of resource investigators. This is a staff of SACRD. These are SACRD employees. Their job is to keep the data up to date and to find new things. If the content on the site is out of date and the food pantry that you go to look for is not there anymore, that's not useful. So we have staff that keep it up to date. We, hardcore working on it all the time. We do about 1,000 updates a month. We look at 1,000 programs a month. We review that information, make sure that it's accurate. We call the phone number. We check the websites. We make sure that we can verify that program is still there and that what we say they're doing is what they're actually doing. That takes a lot of effort. Some of them are really fast. Some people know us, and when we call, they're like, "Oh, it's SACRD," and we get all the information. Other people are just hard to find. Some, you guys experience this yourself. A lot of nonprofit agencies, a lot of organizations are taxed, and they're very busy, don't have enough staff. They don't always answer the phone. So it's hard to get through sometimes, but we work on it. If we can't get through the organization, then you probably can't either. And so we want to make sure that that's removed from the directory. We do 1,000 updates a month. We review every entry at least once a year. Some entries are reviewed more than once a year. We're working on services here to do more crowdsourcing. So we have making it easier for the public to review information on SACRD and send updates in, kind of in the Wikipedia model. We're really trying to make sure that we get as much up-to-date information as possible into the directory so that it's useful. That is, those three things are probably the top three things that make SACRD work: proximity, taxonomy, inclusiveness, resource investigator. The site is fully bilingual, English and Spanish. It's capable of other languages. Those are the English and Spanish cover about 98% of the language spoken in San Antonio. We've had a few conversations about adding some additional languages, and given the right opportunity, we would definitely jump into that. And analytics, we don't track who you are, but we track everything that goes on. And so we have the most comprehensive, richest database of who's looking for what in every zip code in the city. So I can come in and say, in 78212, the top 3 searches were this, this, and this, and these were the programs that people are looking at. We can use that data to inform new program development, public policy, investment. That is an enormous, very impactful set of data and analytics that we have that can tell us about what our neighbors are looking for and what people are providing, all in one place, sacred.org. All right, so we work on these things called portals. So we have what we call SACRD General, which is I come in, I search, I find a food pantry, I get a clothes closet. What we consider simpler services. These things are not simple, but they are easier to understand. A food pantry, most food pantries operate in the same way, et cetera. So there's not a lot of variety in the way that those programs operate. But for more complex types of services, we create what are called portals. A portal is just a way for us to expand the taxonomy in one small area. So, for example, mental health. When we started on the mental health on the SACRD General back in 2019, we had about 5 mental health categories. As we started looking at the programs and the searches and what people were looking for, we discovered that 5 is not really enough. So we really dove into just that part of the taxonomy. We expanded it. We have now about 100 categories related to mental health, going down to what types of diagnoses are being treated, what's the service format, what licensures does the organization have, what age ranges do they treat, languages that they deliver service in, et cetera. And so we use that to build what we call a portal, which is really just a way for us to really blow out the taxonomy in one small area, in this case, mental health. We did that in 2021. It was our first experiment on this. It's been hugely successful. Today, we're working on adding, we're going to refresh the way that looks a little bit. We're going to add demographics about the providers. So if you want to come in and say, I'm looking for a Black female LGBTQ veteran counselor, you'll be able to find that on SACRD. And so, we're looking for, we'll be able to get those demographics of the providers and include that. We should have that, I hope, in 2024. We continued with our portal work. We did the housing finder. This is a way for somebody that has common housing barriers to find a place to live. So for example, let's say you lost your job in the pandemic and you broke your lease and moved back in with your parents, and you've got bad credit and you have outstanding balances with the utility companies, and you need an all bills paid apartment that's $1,000 a month on the east side. You can use the housing finder to find that one that will accommodate a broken lease, criminal record, whatever common barriers you have. Housing Services Portal was just released this year. This is everything you need for housing other than finding a place to live. I need help with utility assistance. I need help with repairs. I've got a legal problem. I'm getting evicted. I need help. I have a foreclosure problem. I inherited a house from my grandmother and I don't know what to do. So things like that. So the Housing Services Portal will help you with all of that. We have another one that's planned in 2025. I don't want to talk about it for, out of, bad juju if something comes in and that doesn't happen, but it's but I expect that funding to come in the next couple of months, and I think we'll launch that probably in January, February of 2025. And we have 2 more that we're in discussions with that will probably be late 2025, 2026 timeframe. So very excited. We continue to do this. This is really what you're witnessing with the portals is really it's an expansion of the taxonomy. It's just a deeper way for people to engage more succinctly with the information that they're looking for. So growing, moving forward, and so forth. What else do? We do these custom guides. So the first one we did was with Sarah. We did a homelessness services guide. in 2019. We don't support that anymore. That's been replaced by the Housing Services Portal. But this was a way that we can create a custom guide, an organization that wants to have their own resource directory around their own specific initiative. We can put that up on SACRD. It's part of SACRD. We maintain it, but they're able to use it as their own branded solution. So Sarah had one for, now they're called Close to Home, but they had a homelessness services guide. Of course, At the Intersection is hosted on SACRD, all of the history there. We did a domestic violence page. We have a page around digital connectivity. So we're supporting the San Antonio Digital Connects project. They actually have on their website, they can see a map of all the places you can go to get help with digital connectivity in your home. So we can do these. These are ways that SACRD raises funds. We charge for these, but it is a way that an organization who wants to have their own map and their own resource directory or guide around a specific set of services and initiatives, they can hire SACRD to do that. They don't have to do it themselves. We do everything for it, and it looks like theirs, branded like theirs, looks like theirs, presents like their data, but they hire SACRD to do that. So SACRD is more than just a directory. It is a source of information. So if you need information about human services in San Antonio, this is where you come. SACRD.org. If you need help finding a program, this is where you come. If you're a person operating a program or working in a human service environment, SACRD is where you go to meet other people that are doing that and to find what other people are doing, to meet them. We do training sessions. We did 68 training sessions in the last 12 months. 1,350 people attended those sessions. That's a lot of people. User and advisory groups. What do you do? A quarterly user group. We're having one today, actually. We had 300 people attend those. We also put together advisory groups from time to time where we just bring a group of subject matter experts in a particular area. In this case, it was housing. And we just kind of sit them down, and we get about 15, 18 people in a room, and we sit them down. We have this really deep conversation around housing to make sure that SACRD knows what we're doing. SACRD are information experts. I'm not a housing expert. I'm an information expert. So I can take that information from these housing experts, and I can turn it into something that is, we can turn it into something that is extremely useful, and make sure that we're really meeting the need. This year, we also started half-day symposiums that we're doing. We did our first one in May. It was all around mental health. We had 105 people in that room. We've scheduled another one in November 2024. We're going to talk about housing. That's going to be at Region 20 in November 2024. You can sign up for our newsletter, and you can get notices about all of this stuff. But if you add all this up, this is like 1,800 people that we've talked to in person in the last year. So in addition to the 300,000 people that we're serving online, 1,800 people, probably more, have actually shown up at a meeting, either on Zoom or in person, and talked to us for an hour, hour and a half, 3 hours about SACRD.org. So we are more than a directory. We are a source of information for the people that are working in compassionate human service. Expansion. SACRD is not just in San Antonio. We're looking to use the platform that we've developed to help other communities. So you can see these other areas. Comal is part of our service area, but they're looking at a custom branding. Out in Big Bend, out in the Alpine area, they've been running a SACRD.org directory that is branded as Big Bend Help out there. City of Waco, the Rio Grande Valley, the Hill Country, these are all in talks, and we hope that they'll be starting up soon. If this comes together and all of these people are active, then the technology that operates SACRD.org and the service that we have developed will be available to a population of 4.5 million people throughout Texas. And all of this I met Anne, and we did an AmeriCorps thing, and we had some community conversations around, what do we need in order to be able to help our neighbors. Now we've developed this platform that potentially has the capacity to reach 4.5 million people. All right, so I'm almost done. So this is the last thing. If you want to tell people about SACRD, the best way to do that is what we call pocket cards. These are just business cards that we hand out. We've handed out 50,000 of these in the last 9 months. So if you want some, you can request them. We give them to you for free, but we would love for you to pay for them, and we give you an opportunity to do that. You can order them here at this tinycc/sacred-cards, or you can just email us at info@sacred.org. All right, that's it. I'm done with my briefing. If you want to connect with me, this is my contact information. I'll leave that up, and I'll stop talking.
Well, thanks, Bill. Boy, we've come a long way, right? A long way, baby. And it has also impact, like much more than 4 million. That potential across the United States and other places. Um, we just need this out there. I'm wondering, Bill, though, if you could go online. I see that Rabbi Lisa Goldstein is here with us. She's from Congregation Shalom. And I mentioned at the beginning how someone asked, how do we find each other? You know, so that resource, how do we find other faith communities that are near us? And what are they doing? And what might we be doing together? So to start those kind of in proximity collaborations. So if you could go back, if you could go to Sacred Online, here he is. And
Yeah.
so they actually meet physically, Congregation Shalom, at 78230
So you can just
is
type their
their
name
zip
in,
code.
and we can
There
just
you
find them. So if
go.
there's an organization, a particular organization that you want to find, you can just type their name in the search box. And then you can click on them, and then you can see what they have. And so we have them listed. We don't have any services for them, so that's probably something we need to look into to see if they're offering services to their neighbors and make sure that we operate that. You can type in that name. There's also this link up at the top called Places, where you can come in and you can just say, I want to look at some places, and you can put in your zip code, 78248 maybe.
Now let's do 230.
230.
Uh-huh.
78230. And then you
So
can go,
that Rabbi Lisa can see what else is happening
yeah,
around
so
her.
here are all the places. And I apologize, some of these are, I'm logged into the site, so I'm seeing more information than the public does. So I see information that we've removed. So I'm sorry about that. That's so this is these are organizations that we've actually taken out that we've determined are not there anymore. But you can see these are all the organizations that we've identified in this area. So you can click on the pins to look at those. There's Congregations of Shalom. You can click on the link to see what's being offered at that service. That's right here under places. You just click on places up here at the top, and then put
So
in
I
your,
also see on that map, just by looking at it, or it was on the last one, but St. Matthew's Catholic was there.
that would be one of these in here.
But so, so if somebody was with a congregation, they could go into the zip code and they could find out some real basics about other congregations or organizations that are near them, the phone number, the address, and if they wanted to even bring folks together, they could start here to find out, well, who's there, who's nearby.
And another feature of this, one of the crowdsourcing features we have is if you are looking at your own organization, maybe you come in and maybe you work at St. Matthew and you want to find out what we have listed, we can see what we have listed for you. You can come in and if we've got something incorrect, which does happen, there's 11,000 listings here. So sometimes data gets out of date or we miss something. There's a link here right at the bottom called Suggest and Edit. This is on every listing we have. So if we miss something here, you can come in, you just click this button, and then you can fill out this form and tell us what we missed. That comes right into our resource investigators, gets updated, usually takes about a day or two for us to verify that information. So not only can you find your neighbors by looking for this, but if you want to make sure that we have your information correct, then you can come in and list that here and review that and then help us update it if we've missed something. And we post on when we last updated things. So in this case, this particular program, somebody reviewed it sometime within the last 30 days. This one is a little older, so we haven't looked at this one in close to a year. So this one will be reviewed soon. So you get the idea of how frequently we're looking at this information. But yeah, you can find yourself. You can type in the name of any organization. Maybe you're looking for a particular church or a particular faith community that you're looking for. You can type that in. Maybe there's a particular nonprofit you're aware of that you want to look for. You can type that in. If you have a particular need, you can type that in. The search box is very useful. You can type in all manner of things and get that. So use it to find a service, use it to find your neighbor, use it to find how your organization is being shown on Sacred. All that can be done through that useful little search box.
Awesome. So we're going to take a brief pause and then go into some Q&A and conversation. It's 8:30 at the intersection. Thanks, Bill, for giving us this amazing briefing. And I'm going to go ahead and show people online, which I had wanted to do before. But you can get all of the recordings from at the intersection. So there's this resource as well. So shortly, of course, it will be posted. SACRD.org will go into this recording. Last week we talked about domestic violence and got a briefing there, and mental health before, but you can go through and go back to these recordings and click on them and be able to share that with teams, with your organization, with your congregation. To use this as a resource too when you're trying to explain to people what is sacred and what has it been doing. So instead of totally relying on your memory, you can go to it once it's posted later, probably today or tomorrow, and you can just have Bill tell everybody and you'll get the most recent information. So it connects us as well in terms of information and being as smart as we can be together as leaders in the community. Next week, we're going to be looking at a briefing update on where we've come in terms of violence prevention strategy here in San Antonio. So another update of another collaborative effort that our portion of it began that Thursday at the intersection after Uvalde school shooting happened. So it really started to get some traction there, a lot of collaborative work, and eventually became a violence prevention strategy that Metro Health picked up and created in a huge collaboration across the city. So we hope to hear about that next Thursday at the intersection. So hope to see you there. Do we have any questions or thoughts from those attending for Bill about SACRD? You did such a great job, Bill. Squeezed a whole lot of information in a very short period of time. It's just amazing the size of the numbers. You were telling me the other night how many of those cards have gone out. I don't know if you said that. How many have gone out?
They're available in English and Spanish, and in the last since December 1st of last year, we've sent out 50,000 cards, and those go out. They're typically being requested by an organization that interacts with people, and so they want to have a card to be able to give to the client to be able to come to remind them of SACRD. Typically, they look together at SACRD.org, and then they give the client a card, or they print something out from SACRD and hand that off. And so we have 50,000 of those have gone out. I get 3 or 4 requests a week. I mean, it's getting a little outrageous actually on how many cards are. But I mean, I order them. I used to order them. I would order 2,000 cards every 3 months, and now I'm ordering 10,000 cards a month for this. It's insane how many of those are being used and distributed. And I've heard.
Well, I noticed too you had a URL that people could go to and order them themselves and have them printed and shipped right to you. So take out the middleman Bill.
Yeah, you fill out a Google form, and because there's so many of them going on that it's 200 and something requests that it's hard to keep up with. So you just fill out a Google form, put in your address and where you want them shipped, and we mail them out. There's even a form in the box that helps you donate if you want to cover the cost of those cards.
There's a question in chat: are there plans for translation for the Arabic-speaking communities?
We've had a conversation with an organization who would like that to happen, and that requires funding. And so if that funding comes forward, they're looking for a funding source that would support that. So yes, we would do that. The platform can sustain with minor updates, can sustain translation into a large number of languages. And so yes, we're looking at that. But in order to do that, we would have to retain somebody that is fluent in the target language to help us do the work. And then the technology behind it is almost none. It's really all that front end work of actually doing the translation using machine translation first, and then having a person review it, so that it goes through. But that would take there's about 30 million words on the sacred.org website. And so it is not a small thing to translate, but it is doable, and we would do it for any language that we felt was appropriate for the community.
And it makes sense too, the need for funding, then that helps keep the site free to the people who are using it.
That's
There's
right.
some investment, but then that helps the community be able to access it at no cost.
Yeah.
What does it cost to
So
have something sacred
Yeah.
translated?
So to translate sacred into an Arabic language would be a full-time job for one person for close to 6 months, probably. And then to maintain it, we would need, that person would have to stay on. So you're talking about, probably a 3/4 full-time employee to be able to sustain that. And we can, in the Spanish language, we can get employees that can do other things as well. So they can do the Spanish work while they're doing the other resource investigation work. So it's a little cheaper in Spanish because there's just more ubiquitous speakers. But in Arabic, we would have to have probably a 3/4 employee on staff to be able to do that. And so think that, an employee at a $20 an hour pay rate, an employee costs an employer about $60,000 a year to employ that person. And so a little under 60,000 a year. So, most of that is salary, but there's additional costs that the employer has to pay, what are called benefited costs, that go into that as well. So that's, so an employee costs about $60,000. And so at $20 an hour, which we try to pay, that as a minimum rate. We think that's a sustainable, livable wage. So we try to pay, that's what I hope is our minimum pay rate, what I try to make our minimum pay rate for anyone that works for Sacred. But the total cost of Sacred, this service, I mean, it's worth it. If somebody tried to build this from scratch and hire a company to do this, I don't know, Billy, you have a sense of this. I mean, millions, several $1 million to develop.
Million to get it up and running. Yep.
And we've developed it. I think our total spend over 6 years, the total money we've raised and spent has been about $600,000. And that's, so a lot of this has been done just by volunteer effort, on the part of the people that wanted this to happen. But that's not sustainable over the long term. To run Sacred at the capacity that it needs to be run at will cost about $450,000 a year, in that range. That sounds like a lot, but if you think of, sacred.org takes away a lot of work that was being done by case managers and social workers in agencies. A group of social workers that work for a nonprofit agency might each spend 10% of their time doing resource work, trying to find resources and develop that because they need that for their clients. We've taken all that work away, and we've done it for them and given them back to them on almost zero time. So if 10 employees were spending 10% of their time that they don't have to do anymore, that's one full employee that Sacred.org has added to that organization. And think about that, there's 2,500 organizations in Sacred. So we've in theory, not in theory, in practice, unmeasurable practice, but we've added hundreds of full-time social workers back into the client-facing work just by doing Sacred.org. That costs $450,000 a year. One social worker costs at least 60, probably closer to 80. So if we've added back into no additional costs, say 100 social workers back into the client-facing time, that's something like, I don't know, do the math, right? I mean, $5 million, $8 million, something like that we've added back into the nonprofit world, or compassionate world. We added $8 million for $450,000 in spend. That's pretty good, right? That's a simple investment, right? I mean, that's a no-brainer investment. So spend $450,000 to get $8 million of impact. That's an easy calculation that we're trying to convince people of why Sacred should continue to be funded at the level it needs to be. And those are kind of the gross business things, right? It's not the exciting part about helping people, right? But it's part of, it's part of the calculus. I mean, it's not free. It's free to use, but it's not free to run. And it takes money, and that money has to come from somewhere. And it's, City of San Antonio has been very generous. Several foundations around have been very generous. Individuals like everyone on this call has been generous. So, but it is a very impactful investment in the space. I kind of think of it as it's like a compassionate utility. it's like compassionate electricity.
Mhm. And you know,
And
those numbers are so helpful. I know when we first started SACRD to try to describe it to people, and what we saw, as Billy would say, it would raise all the boats, right? Well, when you have those kind of ideas and, oh yeah, that makes so much sense, it'll raise all the boats. Well, but you put numbers to that. For 450,000, we're talking it's raised $8 million worth of boats,
right.
right? That helps us get our head around it, what the impact is and benefit to the entire community. So we were talking earlier too, Bill has the idea of putting together a short video on how to find your neighbor through sacred.org, those around you, which we kind of did this morning. And thank you for doing that, Bill. Because I don't even think always to do that. I'm looking more for, those kind of hands-on resources. And I don't always think, oh, I could go into SACRD and find out who all is in a particular area if we're trying to do some sort of collaborative effort there.
Mhm.
So it is finding resources, but just in a different way, but it's all still there.
Yeah.
So
we do that. We give that information to, we don't just give our information away. Let me just be blunt on that. But we do
right.
share information with our partners around. We get a lot of requests from city council offices. They're trying to put together a community meeting, and they want to invite all of the organizations that are around. We had, Metro Health was doing a process where they're working on a food map that's not a public map. They're actually working internally on how to redevelop a food distribution network within Metro Health. And so they were looking for information about food pantries in a particular area. And so we're able to provide that information to our partners in a way that helps them. The analytics that are underneath SACRD, I mean, think about that. There's, there's 600,000 visits, about 3 pages per visit. That's almost 2 million data points that we have that you can use to kind of hone in on what are people looking for in any particular area. The value of the data that's being generated underneath SACRD is really has the potential to drive public policy and investment in a major way. But that's not free. And so that, that has to be supported in order for that to happen. So, but we're on the cusp of some with all this data that I think is going to be really, really transformative. SA 2020 was doing their annual report, and they're not doing that anymore. I think SACRD has an opportunity to step in and take over some of that reporting, and we're looking at a way. It wouldn't be the breadth of what SA 2020 was trying to do. It would really be around just compassionate activity and human service, but we're working on something that would be a community resource there at the level that the SA 2020 data reports were.
I think the other thing, and I know SA 2020 did it as well, but also where the gaps are at in that kind of reporting, that's where you can really start to put your hands on things. We don't have any food there, we don't have any housing there. And the simpler, the better, it's not always having every last data point and detail. It's about where do we need to move, and where do we have access, both of those things. So
we've done
it's
some really
8:44. Yeah.
We've done some really interesting studies. Like during COVID, we did a study around, and this is a little morbid, but we did a study around where the death rates were highest in the city. And we overlaid where the grief counseling and bereavement services were available. And not surprisingly, they didn't line up. And so from that, we're able to show here's where the need is in this particular area, and here's where the resources are. And we're able to present that to people, and new services were generated as a result of that. New partnerships were formed, and all this grief counseling and bereavement services and all that came forward as part of that. And that just led to more knowing your neighbor and meeting, finding that, people finding the help they needed, as well as the services and the resources getting into the neighborhoods that weren't being served.
I don't know about the rest of you. Now I want to hear that report. So the next time SACRD comes back, I want to hear that about death and grief support. And so help me to remember, because I forget. So it now is 8:45. And so thank you, Bill and Billy, sacred.org. for helping us find each other and find resources in the city, for powering at the intersection all this time as well.